Part 74. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 731. Although he was furious, Newgate was a top boss who had been famous for many years, so he quickly calmed down. It's not scary to be plotted against. What's scary is not knowing there is a conspiracy at all. Now, at least, I know that the Navy has really done something to target him. It can be considered that there is a calculation and a buffer. Maybe it is arranged properly, still in time. After taking a deep breath and stabilizing his thoughts, Newgate glanced at Marco. Marco quickly understood, turned around and closed the door tightly. He didn't leave, and Newgate didn't chase anyone away. Although he regards Teach as the person who will take over him in the future, the one Newgate relies on most now is actually Marco. There is no contradiction in this, just like the dynasty is destined to be passed on to the prince, but if the emperor has a problem, the first thing to do is to go to the prime minister. Only then did Newgate speak. Orgrim, what did you mean when you said you wanted to ventilate with me? Let me ask you first, if Newgate, that Teach, is really captured by the Navy, and there is some conspiracy to force you into the trap, will you save him or not? Orgrim asked. Although he had always thought that Newgate must be trying to save people, he had never really heard him speak. At this time, Orgrim must have settled this first. The rest is a follow-up. Newgate frowned, without any hesitation at all, and said directly, of course we must save. From a personal point of view, Teach is his chosen second generation. Now he has been accidentally captured by the insidious Navy. As a father or a captain, you should save him. How could you not save him? From a higher perspective, Newgate also understands that the Navy will definitely attack his Whitebeard pirates unless he releases his territory. But is this possible? Is his reputation as Whitebeard gone? Whitebeard have the pirates lost their face? Therefore, in Newgate's view, this is a situation with no way out. The Navy is not just saying that it wants to catch Teach and kill him. It is to kill them, the Whitebeard pirates. Today he doesn't care about Tikai, and he may be able to find peace for a while, but before too long, the Navy will definitely have follow-up arrangements waiting for him. Can he take one step back, 2 steps back, or can he keep retreating? No, it's possible. Therefore, Newgate is also decisive. He doesn't even back down from the first step, and it's over. If your Navy wants to eat my Whitebeard pirates, you have to see if your appetite is that big. No matter what, a few of your teeth will be broken. After hearing Newgate's answer, Orgrim's heart was certain. It's done. In that case, let's join forces. Orgrim said without hesitation. Newgate was stunned for a moment, frowned slightly and said, how can we join forces? The reason why a conspiracy is because it cannot be seen in the light. What the Navy did was a conspiracy in the early stage and a conspiracy in the later stage. But fortunately, we discovered something fishy when it was still a conspiracy. So be prepared and things will work out. Much easier to handle, Orgrim said in a deep voice. What he said is correct. The Navy's plan has conspiracies and conspiracy. It is a conspiracy in the early stage. It is obvious that it wants to strike quickly, accurately, and hard. It will take people by surprise. Once the execution begins, the news was published in the newspaper, it was a conspiracy. Newgate had to come even if he didn't come. Falling into the Navy's trap without preparation. That is the most terrifying thing. What do you want? Newgate thought for a while and asked again. Pirate Alliance. Orgrim said in a deep voice. After a slight pause, Orgrim continued, actually, I was also ready to start a war. Unexpectedly, the Navy took a step ahead, a little faster than me. As a result, my plan will change a little. Originally, I was still thinking about whose power the Navy would use as a breakthrough point. Of course, I think the one with the greatest possibility is you. After all, you are at the front. Now that I see it, it is indeed you. Newgate said, a little unhappy when he heard this. Isn't this your plan back then? You brought me here. But even though he complained, he didn't really resent anything. Otherwise, if Orgrim forced him, he would have resisted long ago, and it would be impossible for him to carry it so smoothly. Gee, ha 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 ha, don't let go. Orgrim laughed. At this time, Newgate felt something was wrong. This seems to be going according to your ogre's wishes. The same goes for me, the navy. Don't worry, it's all your fault, Orgrim, right? But if you think about it carefully, it's impossible, no chance, no reason. Can Orgrim still arrange for the navy to do what he wants? In any case, Newgate was not aware of the various changes caused by the internal conflicts in the navy and the battle between marshals. Even if he knew it, he probably wouldn't have thought that Orgrim could take advantage of the situation and come up with some tricks. So although he had some doubts in his heart, he didn't say anything after all. What's more, what can I do if I have doubts? Change the status quo? Originally, I was planning to put the navy into the New World, so I have been competing with the navy for patience, but I didn't expect that they would do something like this. If you, the Whitebeard pirates, fight out and attack Marineford, there is a very good chance that they will. 89 will fall there. By then, not to mention the first line of defense blocking the New World will be gone, and the navy will be able to sweep the New World with the power of victory. It's too bad for us. Therefore, no matter what, I can't watch your Whitebeard pirates go to Marineford for free, right? Orgrim said in a deep voice again. What he said was quite unpleasant, as if Whitebeard had gone to Marineford and was bound to fall into disgrace. But the Whitebeard at this time is no longer the Whitebeard in the original story. He had lost to Orgrim before, so he didn't underestimate the possibility of failure. In fact, in the original story, Newgate had already expected that he would go to Marineford and never come back. Not to mention the current situation. The navy is indeed extremely powerful. Not to mention the aging Whitebeard pirates. Even if it were the Warhammer pirates who were at the height of their power, it would probably be difficult to defeat them. You're right. Newgate finally admitted this shortcoming and did not want to save face and suffer the consequences. Although the navy is strong, we are not easy to bully. If we join forces to fight Marineford, we still have a great chance of winning, Orgrim said softly. So, what are your intentions? Stop talking nonsense about rejecting the navy and the New World, Zi suddenly said. Orgrim was silent for a while, and then slowly said, just think that I am showing favor to your Whitebeard pirates. After the war, if we lose, none of us will be left behind. Luck well, maybe we can still be neighbors in Impelton. If we're not lucky, we'll go have a drink with Roger, but if we win, I am willing to admit defeat. Newgate immediately agreed without waiting for Orgrim to speak. Although there was no such thing as a bet. But it was the same way back then. With the words of willing to admit defeat, Newgate led the Whitebeard pirates and surrendered. Not to mention the second line, he is still at the forefront of the New World. Now, this willingness to admit defeat also represents Newgate's will. If this war is won, the Whitebeard pirates will inherit his Orgrim from now on. A love, where the Warhammer pirates have done, the Whitebeard pirates have to give in 3 points. In fact, Newgate himself also has a grudge in his heart. After this war is over, no matter whether he wins or loses, there will be no way in the new era in the future. If Orgrim wins, he will definitely rule the world. By then, no one will have any reason to fight with him, and the Whitebeard pirates will no longer have the strength to do so. Just give in. Good, Orgrim also responded decisively. After confirming these, the rest of the details can be discussed later. The two quickly discussed a response plan. The fact that the Navy has not reported this news now means that they are not ready yet. That's fine. Don't reveal anything too much. To be honest, I have secretly summoned cotters here and prepared for the war. Over there, let's also find a way to gather strength without leaving any trace. The Navy thinks it can catch us off guard, so we will be fully prepared for him. Orgrim said softly. Newgate nodded. He also knew that there is no need to rush. Teach was caught and was used to catch his own bait. If nothing else, at least it can be judged that it is not life-threatening. Therefore, we should not be anxious now, but should be prepared to deal with sudden wars. Counter the Navy. I have already made arrangements with Fishman Island. When the time comes, we will concentrate our main combat forces on Fishman Island. Once the Navy gives the news, we will declare war. Orgrim said again. Well, starting from Fishman Island and heading to Marineford is indeed an advantage in terms of time. Newgate said after thinking for a while. After a slight pause, he asked again, are you coming too? I will definitely come, but I need you to take care of things first. I have other things to do. Orgrim said frankly. What's the matter? Newgate was a little surprised. Is there anything more important than this war? Do a favor to some old friends. Don't worry, it will be very quick. Maybe we will meet on the same battlefield. Orgrim said with a smile. Seeing that Orgrim didn't mean to explain clearly, Newgate stopped asking any more questions. Okay, if that's the case, let's make arrangements like this first and we'll keep in touch. Newgate said after thinking for a while. Well, let's do this for now, each of you will make preparations, Orgrim said. The two bosses didn't talk about anything in secret, and they both hung up the phone bug soon. Newgate didn't show anything to Orgrim in the phone bug. But as soon as the phone bug hung up, the shadowy color on his brow became more and more intense. Dad, Mal called out worriedly. Delise, Newgate then slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air and said in a deep voice, both sides have no good intentions. The same goes for the Navy, and so does Orgrim. However, at least he can compromise with Orgrim, and that guy is not a person who wants to kill everyone. But it is not so easy to talk to the Navy. Therefore, the situation has been decided, and Newgate can only choose to join forces with Orgrim. Although I feel that there is something wrong with this bastard Orgrim, I have to say that joining forces with this guy really makes people feel confident. After thinking for a while, Newgate said with the order, all captains and captains will secretly go to Fishman Island to wait for the next news. The ships and subordinates will continue to maintain the status quo and confuse the Navy. Marco was stunned for a moment. Said, Dad, if there's a fight, we don't have enough troops. As for our Whitebeard pirates, we only need to send out elites. Our strength is, the Ogum family has a great cause and has enough troops on hand, so we don't need to fill them in, Newgate said unceremoniously. If the entire Whitebeard pirates begin to assemble, the Navy will definitely be able to find clues. By then, something unexpected may happen. But if only the elite are gathered, that would be a lot easier to do, not to mention gathering towards Fishman Island. The thought of joining forces with that bastard Orgrim made Newgate a little funny. But Marco was very emotional. The once strongest, and the current the strongest. They have to join forces to deal with the Navy headquarters. This is really a once-in-a-century scene. Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 732. Navy headquarters. Marineford was flying slowly in the air, heading towards the New World. The captains and captains of the Whitebeard pirates are also secretly heading to Fishman Island, and the Warhammer pirates are also making similar movements. Meanwhile, in the Holy Land Marijoya, the 5 old stars are heading to Pongal Castle. Pongal Castle is a huge castle built on Marijoya. Every time the World Conference is held, royal families from various countries will gather here to discuss world affairs. At the same time, the Throne of the Void, which symbolizes equality and peace, is also placed here. Under normal circumstances, Pangal Castle is not open to the public, but today, the 5 old stars came here together. Many years ago, this ancient castle had a history of hundreds of years, but it was later destroyed by Orgrim. Now it is newly built to imitate its previous appearance. After entering the Pangal Castle, the 5 old stars waved their hands and said, "You are all waiting here." The CP-0 guards on the side nodded together and said yes. The 5 figures quickly passed through the courtyard and came to the door of the Void Hall where the Void Throne was located. It was only then that the faces of the 5 old stars showed some hesitation and uneasiness. Lord Im is inside at this time. And the 5 of them are planning to rebel. Of course you will feel uneasy when you meet the rightful owner at this time. Speaking of which, it's a coincidence. In the past few days, the 5 old stars had been preparing to find a way to contact Lord Im, who had yet to see the dragon. But in fact, they don't have any good way to contact them. After all, it was Master Im who always took the initiative to contact them to do things. And the reason why this kind of war is going to happen is to attract Lord Im to show up. Not to mention, he really came and summoned the 5 old stars. Standing in front of the main hall, the 5 old stars looked at each other. The hesitation and uneasiness in the 5 people's eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by determination and ruthlessness. The matter has come to this, the arrow has to be fired. Unless this Master Im is killed, the 5 of them will never get ahead. Taking a deep breath, the 5 old stars slowly opened the door and walked in. The room was a bit dark, with many lights not lit, and the environment seemed a bit obscure. As soon as they entered the door, they first closed the hall again, and then the 5 old stars continued to walk a few steps forward, reaching the center of the hall, in front of the stairs leading to the Void Throne. I didn't dare to take a closer look, I just glanced at it and could vaguely see a figure sitting on the Void Throne that no one had been qualified to do for 800 years. He couldn't see his face clearly, but it seemed that this figure was resting. Without speaking a word, the 5 old stars all knelt down in front of the stairs leading to the Void Throne. The scene became quiet for a while. In the huge courtyard, only the breathing of a few people could be heard. Perhaps Lord Im was taking a nap, but for a long time, there was no movement in this hall. In front of people, the 5 elder stars are called the highest authority of the world government. As I kneeled here for a long time, I only felt pain in my waist and back. After all, the 5 of them were pampered and well off. Normally, people would only kneel down to them. How could there be any reason for them to kneel down and worship others? But even so, he still didn't dare to make any noise, for fear of disturbing Lord Im. And under their heads pressed against the ground, the eyes of the 5 people were a little gloomy. This kneeling seemed to strengthen the belief of the 5 of them. You must kill this Im Sama. I don't know how long it took, but Lord Im on the Void Throne seemed to finally have some movement. The 5 old stars couldn't see clearly, but in fact, Master Yuma was actually sitting on the throne of the Void, taking a nap. Maybe immortal people have the same concept of time. From time to time, they like to take a nap to kill the boring time. Orgrim has sat on the throne of the Void, and felt that the design of this throne was very unreasonable and there was no comfort at all when sitting on it. In fact, this throne is indeed like this, without any comfort. At that time, the 20 kings specially set it up. Maybe there were some who were vigilant. But Lord Im, he is still sitting here. One of his arms was holding his chin, and the other arm was resting on the other side. His body was slightly tilted, and he was breathing a slight airflow. At the end of that arm, on the fingertips, there was a colorful butterfly. Perhaps the butterfly had had enough rest, and it flapped its wings slightly and left Master Im's fingertips. It was at this moment that Master Im's eyes opened slightly. No wonder some people say that my hawk and this guy may be related. It is true, but judging from their eyes, the two are indeed very similar. Their eyes are as sharp as eagles. However, my hawk's eyes were sharp, and Master Im's pupils were the same, but not as sharp. He looks very peaceful and doesn't look like the big boss behind the scenes who has ruled the world for hundreds of years. His eyes did not look at the 5 old stars, but instead followed the flying butterfly, moving left and right. It seems that in his heart, the 5 people with the highest power are not as valuable and status as this butterfly. The butterfly flew slowly, circled around the throne twice, and landed on the 20 sharp blades guarding the throne. It was only then that Master Yumu took his eyes away from the butterfly. He lowered his head slightly and looked at the 5 people kneeling under the stairs. They didn't speak, but the 5 old stars clearly felt that Lord Im was watching them. As if they had already rehearsed it, at the same time, the 5 old stars spoke together. 5 old stars, see Lord Im. After he finished speaking, he still didn't raise his head, as if he was waiting for some order. After a long time, a crisp voice came down from the void throne. Get up. If Orgrim were here, he would definitely be very surprised, because this voice is a woman's voice. Yes, Master Yumu, who controls everything behind the scenes, is actually a woman. Following Master Yumu's instructions, the 5 old stars stood up from the ground one after another. They did not speak. After all, they were summoned, and they only needed to follow Master Im's instructions. After standing quietly for a while, Master Im he continued, is a war about to break out. The bearded 5 old star responded, reporting to Lord Im, this is the case. The Navy headquarters has gone to the New World, and the battle for the New World between the Navy and the pirates is about to break out. Why did Marineford go to the New World? Lord Im asked again. The 5 old stars were sweating in their hearts. The blond man quickly said, for strategic purposes, it is to have an unexpected force effect. The Navy Marshal believes that such a chance of victory will be bigger. Admiral, Master Yumu murmured softly first, and then said, what about you? What do you think? Us, the blond man hesitated for a moment, then quickly said, we also think this plan is a good one. In other words, the Navy has a greater chance of winning in the war? Lord Im thought for a while and asked again. The bald king said, at this time, from a comparison of strength and tactics, it is true that the Navy has a greater chance of winning. Of course, it is limited to the Whitebeard pirates, and it can even be defeated from the Whitebeard pirates. Which can be seen, the power of crushing. Please give me flowers. He is indeed not lying, but judging from the books, the Navy is going all out. How can the Whitebeard pirates win? It's not of the same level of strength at all. But he didn't say anything, because it's not just the Whitebeard pirates who can attack the Navy. He didn't continue to ask about this matter. Lord Im seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, she said, Khazgarot Orgrim, do you understand? The moment they heard this name, the hearts of the 5 old stars were trembling, for fear that Lord Im would find out something. But years of preparation and their own psychological quality did not allow them to reveal any flaws. I know him fairly well, having met him a few times, the bearded man said quickly. He certainly didn't dare to hide it. Who knows if Lord Im knows that they have met Orgrim? But it doesn't matter if you know this, as long as you don't know about their conspiracy with Orgrim. Lord Im nodded slightly and continued to ask, according to rumors, he is called the strongest in the world. He is said to have stood at the end of power and reached the other side, is that true? The blond man said, at this time the name of the strongest man in the world is true. In a one-on-one duel, he defeated the once strongest man, Whitebeard Edward Nyuga, head-on, with great dignity and great advantage. Specially, as for the end and the other shore of strength, we cannot be sure. We don't know if there is a new level above him, but there is no doubt that he is at the top of his strength at this time. 00. Imuta responded softly. Simple, no unnecessary words. None of the 5 old stars dared to speak any more. There was another moment of silence, and this depressing atmosphere made the 5 old stars feel very uneasy and uneasy. After a long time, Master Yuma continued to speak. I'm a little tired, you can step back. The eyes of the 5 old stars met with each other. They came here to report the situation, but they were completely unsure of Lord Im's thoughts and intentions. According to the plan, they should invite Lady Im to see if she has any intention of coming to the front line in person. But at this moment, the 5 of them did not dare to say another word when Master Yuma, who had accumulated power for many years, said, "Retreat." Uneasy. This. In the end, the 5 old stars still couldn't muster up the courage. If it didn't work, let's implement the second plan and start the war in Marijoya. The 5 people saluted and prepared to slowly exit the void hall. But just when the 5 old stars were about to open the palace door and exit completely, Lord Im on the throne spoke again. When the war is about to start, tell me again. This period of time has been too boring. I want to go to Marineford to have a look, make the arrangements and preparations. The 5 old stars had a touch of surprise in their eyes. Is there such a good thing? Yes, Lord Im, I will obey your order. The 5 old stars spoke at the same time. They didn't get any response, and the 5 old stars didn't dare to stay any longer. They opened the palace door and slowly retreated. When the palace door closed again, Lord Im's, however, her eyes still stayed on the position where Wulaoxing was just now. She didn't know what she was thinking, but soon, a wisp of murderous aura overflowed from her body. Staying on the hilt of the knife not far away, that a fragile little butterfly turned into powder under this breath. Boring. In the main hall, Lord Im's clear voice vaguely echoed. After a while, her eyes closed again, she leaned against the void throne and fell asleep quietly. It seems that it is integrated with this throne. She is the king of the world. Chien. Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 733. After the 5 old stars walked out of Ponjil Castle, they were truly relieved. Although it is a bit inexplicable, it is still one step of the plan. Lord Im offered to go to the Marineford front line to personally watch this truly top-notch war. What is the reason? The 5 old stars don't know. Maybe it's because Lord Im is too boring? Or maybe it's because she has other plans. But these are not important. They are just trying to show off their tricks. To get to this point, there is nothing wrong with them. After so many years, this gentleman is still very powerful, the bearded man said with some emotion. The bald king nodded and said, when she opened her mouth, I didn't dare to speak. King of the world, the boss said softly. As soon as the words fell, the 5 old stars fell silent for a while. After walking a little further, the bald king said, but I have gained something after all. I can explain this matter to Orgrim. Can you really win? The blond man suddenly asked uneasily. Maybe it's because he hasn't seen Master Yuma for many years, so the inner fear of Master Yuma has somewhat dissipated. Perhaps it is for this reason, only then did they dare to discuss such a treasonable matter with Orgrim. But at this time, they saw Lord Im again after a long absence. Feeling the silent but real huge pressure, they recalled that they had faced the uneasiness and insignificance towards Im-sama. And the fear that seems to be engraved in my bones. At this age, if I don't take a gamble, I won't have a chance in the future. She is very scary, but Orgrim, is it simple? The bald king thought for a while and said softly. The other 5 old stars were silent for a moment, and then they all chuckled and said, that's right. The 5 old stars returned to their offices. At this moment, at the port of Marijoya, a small boat without any flags also moored. A person stepped out of the boat. This person was wearing a black cloak, completely covering his figure in it, giving him a somewhat mysterious feeling. He stood on the port, with a sense of novelty in his eyes, looking at this holy land called Marie Joaquin. I really didn't expect that I would come here in this way in my lifetime, Na Shen muttered something funny. At this moment, a man appeared on the boat behind him and said, "Captain, don't you really need us to go together?" "No need, the Navy only invited me, and they can't really let more pirates participate." The figure smiled and waved his hands. Yes, this mysterious figure is none other than the red-haired Shanks of the Seven Warlords. Not long ago, he received an edict from the Marshal of the Warring States period. The specifics are he didn't know what the situation was, but he also knew that the Navy was going to war with the pirates. A war in the New World. He was a little strange. Considering the Navy's superiority, it would be more reasonable to bring the pirates out of the New World to fight. However, he has no room to dictate the Navy's combat plan. What's more, he doesn't know that Marineford has already flown to the New World at this time. He thought about it for a long time and felt that if he participated in this war and appeared as King Shishibukai, his reputation would be completely ruined in the pirate camp. But think about it again, he doesn't have a good reputation now. No matter how bad he is, how bad can he be? As for the Navy and the pirates, who can win the war? He was not sure. The Navy was quite powerful, but the pirate bosses in Orgrim were not simple characters either. But no matter what, Shanks felt that this might be a valuable opportunity for him to return to the New World. Therefore, after much thought, he finally agreed to the Shishibukai Edict of Marshal Sengoku and prepared to go to the New World to join the war. Due to various considerations, the Warring States Marshal asked him not to go to the New World from Fishman Island, because there was a high possibility that something would be exposed. So under the arrangement of the Navy, Shanks boarded Marie Joya. This time the king issued the Shishibukai Edict, and the Warring States Marshal was not prepared to let all the red-haired pirates join. It may enhance some combat effectiveness, but it also has good drawbacks. As of now, the Navy is also trying to defeat the rest of them. What they value most is truly top-notch combat effectiveness. Red-haired fragrance is one of them. Therefore, the Warring States period allowed Shanks to go to the New World alone and act according to the plan. Shanks is also brave enough. The Navy asked him to go alone, so he was really prepared to go alone. It has been several years since the battle for supremacy among the New World pirates ended. Shanks lost everything in that war. He originally bet all his future on that war. But in the end, he failed miserably and even lost an arm. Later, he was decadent for a long time. The red-haired pirates escaped from the New World in embarrassment, and he indulged in alcohol all day long, drunk and dreaming. Until, Mihawk met him. The wine poured on his face was like a slap in the face, waking him up. Maybe it's because he's mentally relaxed, or maybe he already has talent for the one-armed sword. In short, if an average person breaks an arm, his strength will be reduced a lot. But this Shanks, not only did his strength not decrease, but he even got a step further amidst the setbacks and tribulations. He is stronger. New World, Shansi, am back. Shanks chuckled, and then walked into the port gracefully. Perhaps, the more frustrated he becomes, the more courageous he becomes. This word is exactly what he wants to describe people like him. Baradigo, White Earth Island, the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. The leader of the rebels, Monkey D. Darag, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, is sitting in his office now. The storm is coming, and the Revolutionary Army, as an organization lurking at the back of the world, can naturally feel it. The clarion call of war seems to have been blown. A few years ago, the big news Morgans predicted in the newspaper that the showdown between the Navy and the pirates seemed to be coming. But one can clearly feel these atmospheres and the urgent atmosphere of war. But the Revolutionary Army under Dalag couldn't grasp the signs at all. It's like you know very clearly that the Navy and the pirates are going to war, and they have even taken action, but there is no evidence. This makes Durag doubts himself very much. Is the game between Orgrim and the warring states marshal so advanced that I, Durag, am not qualified to understand it? How are you going to fight? Where will you fight? When will the fight start? Just as Durag was thinking about this, the door to his office was pushed open, and then the handsome Sabo walked in from the door. Mr. Durag, there are signs. Sabo said with a slightly excited tone. Durag straightened his body and took a look at this capable man who was promoted to the position of Chief of Staff of the Revolutionary Army not long ago. What's the sign? Durag asked. Sabo handed the document in his hand to Durag and said, the latest information is that there is something strange happening on Fishman Island. Durag reached out and took the document, frowned a little, and quickly read it. Fishman Island is a very strange place. In the entire world, the role it occupies is also very special. From a superficial point of view, Fishman Island belongs to the world government and is one of the more than 170 participating countries. It has been a member of the world government for a long time. They joined it 200 to 300 years ago. But in fact, perhaps due to racial and geographical issues, Fishman Island still had a very severe relationship with the world government until more than 10 years ago. It wasn't until Kai Xiaojinbei joined the Shishibukai organization that things got better. As for the world government, the Navy has been trying to infiltrate Fishman Island for more than 10 years. However, not very effective at all. For this reason, we have to talk about the other two strange things about Fishman Island. That is, although Fishman Island is one of the participating countries, they have accepted the flag of the Whitebeard pirates. From the perspective of the territory division of the pirate camp, there is no doubt that Fishman Island is classified under Whitebeard. Of the pirates, the Whitebeard pirates have indeed made achievements on Fishman Island, and have repeatedly pulled out the infiltration plans of the Navy and the world government. This is one of the weird ones. What's even more bizarre is that the flag of the Whitebeard pirates is clearly hanging on the Fishman Island. But in fact, judging from the various forces, the one with the deepest control over Fishman Island is actually the Warhammer pirates. It's the Avalon series. The entire Fishman Island, from top to bottom, regards Avalon, the eternal night sea in the New World, as their second home. There is almost no one among the millions of people on the island who has not been to Avalon. If you say on Fishman Island that you have never been to Avalon, your compatriots will look at you with great pity. It's like you are an ignorant fool. This has resulted in Fishman Island having a natural affinity with the Warhammer pirates from top to bottom. At the same time, the two sides are deeply involved in the cultural, political, economic, and even military fields. Nowadays, the recruitment of the King's Army in Dragon Palace City gives priority to retired members of the Avalon Legion. You can see how deep this impact is. From an economic point of view, 897. The entire Fishman Island's economy is almost entirely tilted towards Avalon. Once there is a problem in Avalon, there is a great possibility that it will directly bring down the Fishman Island. All in all, these two families are basically one. As a result, Fishman Island has become a rather strange place. This island belongs to the participating countries and is under the world government, but it carries the flag of the Whitebeard pirates. The real actual controller is the Warhammer pirates. And inside, there is another King Shishibukai. The complexity of the relationship is simply outrageous. But it is precisely because of this complicated relationship that no one dares to mess with Fishman Island. Except for the ignorant newcomers who dare to make trouble, the other forces are all polite when passing by Fishman Island. In recent times, the situation on Fishman Island has become increasingly weird, and the eyes and ears of the Navy and the world government have been quickly cleared out. The originally open island has also become closed. Pirates are no longer allowed to enter the island and are directly arranged to pass through the forest of the sea. The Revolutionary Army's eyes on Fishman Island were also swept away. But fortunately, there is a somewhat strange relationship between the Revolutionary Army and Fishman Island, and some ambitious Fishman tribesmen have also joined the Revolutionary Army. Therefore, at this time when everyone was blind, the Revolutionary Army obtained a little bit of information, but this bit of information seemed very important. Jorah Cormahawk and Foyle Bysta drinking together in the tavern on Fishman Island. Drag looked at the information in his hand with some surprise. Soon, he realized something. The Warhammer pirates and the Whitebeard pirates have joined forces. And the recent abnormalities on Fishman Island are not because of their feelings. When I feel the atmosphere of war, I want to escape from the world and avoid the waves of this war. But because Fishman Island is a part of this war, even a crucial part. But after thinking about this, Durag still felt helpless. Because no matter how you look at it, it seems that this war has nothing to do with his Revolutionary Army. There was no room for him to interfere. To put it bluntly, the Revolutionary Army is extremely weak in comparison between these two maritime overlords. If he, Dualage, dares to step forward and estimate the aftermath of the war, he can crush his Revolutionary Army. Being weak is the original sin, Durag whispered helplessly. _fly. Remind you, 3 things to do when reading, collect, recommend, and share. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 734. Fishman Island Port. At this time, you can see from a distance that densely packed warships, probably more than 200, are heading towards the island. What is even more surprising is that these warships are traveling in the deep sea without coating. Yes, this is exactly the new diving technology that Master Tom has developed before. The Black Narwhal, the overlord of the deep sea, was originally intended to be used on Orgrim. And this new set of technology was not left to eat ashes, and was used by Avalon to build a batch of new warships. These more than 200 new warships are Avalon's most high-end new submarine warships. Of course, this technology is not without its drawbacks. Like the Black Narwhal, in addition to diving, it can also fly. But this batch of warships cannot fly due to their excessive weight. In other words, adding flight costs is not worth the gain, so I didn't go in this direction. There are more than 200 warships, with a total strength of 200,000. Gathered the elite forces of the major legions of the Avalon series. Just as Whitebeard predicted, the Orgrim family has a great business and has no need for the miscellaneous troops of the Whitebeard pirates. Although Whitebeard's men also have many people, they do not have an organized legion system after all. It was formed by various pirate groups, and its combat power may not be weak, but there is nothing wrong with calling it a no-name. This kind of strong and scattered force is actually at a considerable disadvantage when facing the elite navy of the Navy headquarters. This point was also exposed a lot during the battle on the top of the original story. First of all, the level displayed by the Whitebeard pirates in scheduling and adjusting the rhythm of the war was not as efficient and orderly as the Navy. It feels a bit like a mob. Secondly, their military morale is unstable, or in other words, they have no military morale at all. Sakaski fooled him, and the Great Vortex Spider Squad went up and gave Newgate a move with the Filial Sun sword. After the incident, people from all walks of life were shaken in their beliefs and doubted whether Newgate had really betrayed them. This is simply retarded behavior. Fortunately, Newgate was very clever at the time and stabilized the morale of the army in just a few steps. But this is enough to expose the shortcomings of their pirates. But the 200,000 troops assembled by Orgrim this time do not have to worry about this problem at all. Because they themselves know that they are definitely elite. It is impossible to be included in the queue of giving up. Once they are all abandoned, regardless of the outcome of the war, it will be a problem for Avalon to recruit troops in the future. It will also cause a huge blow to the military system that Avalon has built over the years. At the same time, These 200,000 elites can be regarded as Orgrim going all out. It is an army used to fight tough battles. From the beginning, the strategies of Orgrim and warring states were very different. The fundamental strategies of the two are completely opposite. The basic strategy of the warring states marshal was to rely on the navy's large and mature system, use the general trend, and use both soft and hard power to renovate the world. Orgrim is different. Maybe he can be called a behemoth now, but from a military point of view, the Avalon system is not qualified to be compared with the Navy. The Navy has more than 10 million people under its command. For the top war in the story, just 100,000 elite general-level officers from all over the world and various bases were mobilized. It is certainly impossible to gather all the generals and colleges. So from the perspective of military rank, it is impossible for a major to have 10 people under his command, right? Therefore, based on the lowest standard conversion, the Navy has 1 million troops within the 4 seas. And from a mid-level perspective, the major should have at least 100 men under his command, right? Otherwise, even the warships cannot be launched. Then, by calculation, the Navy has at least tens of millions of troops within the 4 seas. If it really goes too far, I estimate, then it's gone to sea. And how many soldiers does Avalon have? Therefore, the strategies of both sides cannot be the same from the beginning when it comes to tactical purposes. It's also completely different. It is very likely that they want to fight a protracted war and completely wipe out the pirates in the New World. But Orgrim wouldn't fight like this. He wouldn't win anyway, and he would lose blood anyway. Therefore, Orgrim's style of play is more brutal, directly defeating your naval headquarters, which is a macro-concept beheading tactic. Defeat the Navy's high-end power, making it impossible to deploy its superior forces. Therefore, the best tactical result is to defeat them in one fell swoop and defeat their belief directly at Marineford. Take down the top brass of the Navy. Shatter all their subsequent plans to enter the New World. This is enough. The Navy was unlikely to enter the New World for at least 20 years. Therefore, Orgrim pulled out all 200,000 of his elites, for no other reason than to capture Marineford in one fell swoop. The Navy has a strong military force, but again, even if you have the world's soldiers and horses, you will have more than 1 million soldiers under your command. But you can't just run around with these millions of troops tied to your belt, right? Marineford cannot accommodate so many, so based on larger estimates, the entire Marineford can accommodate up to 200,000 to 300,000 naval elites. That's almost it. 200,000 Avalon elites can indeed fight this tough battle. Judging from this troop strength, we can also see how both sides set their sights on this war. As soon as they take action, an army of about 500,000 will start fighting, and the scale can be considered huge. At this time, at the port, Jinbei was watching more than 200 warships slowly sail into the port and parked in an orderly manner. The economy of Fishman Island has expanded rapidly in recent years, and various logistics and shipping systems have been developed. Therefore, the port has been expanded and expanded again. It is so huge that it can actually accommodate more than 200 ships. Fishman Island's arrangements to cooperate with the Whitebeard pirates and Warhammer pirates certainly cannot bypass Jinbei, the king of the Shishibukai. From a legal perspective, Jinbei should be on the world government and navy side. But from other angles, Jinbei had no intention of leaning over there. When he knew that the war was about to begin, he immediately chose to side with the Whitebeard pirates and Warhammer pirates. After all, he has a very good relationship with Orgrim and Newgate. On the other hand, the identity of the King Shishibukai is probably that. Previously, he had hoped to use this identity to smooth out the rift between the world government and Fishman Island. Later he found that it was of little use. A few years ago, he no longer cared about the name of King Shishibukai. Otherwise, he would not have started a fight with Porisalino upon meeting on the Shampoo Islands. Seeing a leading battleship stop, Jinbei had a smile on his face. Unlimited firepower and explosions will lift your whole family to the Sky Queen. Jinbei only knew one person on the sea who dared to use such an arrogant and weird ship name. That is the top master of the Warhammer pirates, the leader of the rampaging Lolita Sphinx. Sure enough, not long after the ship was stabilized, the ladder was lowered, and the figure of the Sphinx came down from the top. She still looked like a Lolita, carrying a heavy Gatling gun on her back that seemed incompatible with her size. On her left and right waists were 2 pairs of hand cannons and 2 pistols. At a glance, one can tell that she is fully armed. Sphinx has a wide range of friends, even Fujitora is her gambling friend. The relationship with Jinbei is also quite good. Anyway, she comes to Fishman Island to play often. So when I walked down and saw Jinbei coming to greet him, a happy smile appeared on his face. Ha ha ha, boss Jinbei, long time no see, SPHYNX walked up excitedly and said. She is a free-spirited guy and is known as the biggest gang leader in Avalon. She has younger brothers all over the world and is known as the big sister of the world. The person who can be called boss by her is really not many. Jinbei is one of them, because Jinbei and the Sphinx are indeed congenial. Both of them are very forthright and have a worldly atmosphere. It's true that the eldest sister hasn't been to Fishman Island for a long time, Jinbei said with a smile. Just like the Sphinx calls him boss, Jinbei also naturally calls her eldest sister. Alas, I was very busy before, the Sphinx said pretendingly. After a slight pause, she asked again how many people are on the island. Jinbei stopped chatting and said, Mr. Mihawk, Eniro, and Lucci are all here. There are also many captains and captains from the Whitebeard pirates. The Sphinx listened and nodded. After a while, some more people came behind, including the pirate Empress Boya Hancock and Douglas Barrett. They all came to Fishman Island with the Sphinx. Then Aaron came over and said, Sister, we've made arrangements. Sphinx nodded with satisfaction, and then looked at Hancock and Barrett. Hancock smiled and said nothing, while Barrett nodded at the Sphinx, as if to indicate something. Seeing this, the Sphinx said to Jinbei a little bit this time, I am coming with 200,000 elites drawn from various armies in Avalon. Jinbei, you have to make arrangements. I am now. She is also the general of hundreds of thousands of troops under her command. Sphinx has no experience in commanding large-scale legions. She did a good job in the Battle of Butter Island, but she is indeed not in the command sequence. Therefore, Jinbei could also see that the command of the 200,000 strong army this time should be in the hands of His Highness Hancock and Barrett. In fact, this is indeed the case, but along the way, in order to make himself look more powerful and stinky, Sphinx worked hard to get the title of General from Barrett and Hancock. Honorary of course. Neither Hancock nor Barrett cared about anything with her. And Sphinx is not the kind of person who doesn't know what's important. She just wants a name and no real power. If it comes to a real fight, she is probably a good charger based on her character. It is impossible to command. Ha 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 ha, General, don't worry, we at Dragon Palace City have already arranged everything, Jinbei laughed and said. Hey, with you here, I, the General, feel much more at ease, the Sphinx said in a disgusting manner. At this time, Barrett began to seriously discuss the relevant matters with Jinbei. After chatting for a while, Jinbei asked again, how many of you, Mr. Hammer? Not coming? Hancock shook his head when he heard this and said, Master Hammer will not come to Fishman Island for the time being. He has other things to do. I and others are preparing here now. In a few days, a fleet of supplies will come, Beckman and the rest of the cotters will appear at that time. Jinbei nodded. Seeing that Orgrim didn't come, he didn't ask any more questions why. Barrett added, at this time we have prepared 15 ships, and will soon head to the first half of the Grand Route to conduct intelligence exploration and surveillance around the Marine Headquarters Marineford. Jinbei, please help arrange the route. Well, No problem, Jinbei nodded. After that, Sphinx and others quickly entered the Fishman Island and joined Mihawk and his group. I heard that it won't be too long before the white-bearded Edward Newgate will also land on Fishman Island. War may break out at any time. Falu reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. Support Filu Novel Network, b.faloo.com. Original works, As Long as a Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 735. New World, Gateway C. A small boat is swaying here. But don't underestimate this ship, because this ship is flying the flag of the Evernight Pirates. The captain is none other than Kajgro Andrest, who also made a big fuss in the Chambord Islands not long ago. At this time, on the deck of the ship, Andrest was sitting cross-legged under the mast, holding a square towel in his hand, carefully wiping his demon sword heart crossing. If you move your wrist a little, you can occasionally see the cold light reflected by Xi and Du. Nami was sitting on a sun lounger, wearing a bikini, showing off her explosive figure. She was holding a newspaper in her hand, a glass of juice beside her, and was reading the newspaper. Although her charm was nowhere to be found, no one on the ship had any thoughts about her. Andrest often looked at Nami, a navigator, with a somewhat strange look. There is no other reason, because Andrest always feels that this guy Nami has a restless ambition: I want his baby mother. This is so outrageous and excessive. I treat you as my little friend, but you actually want to be my mother? After all, the news of the world has not published any news or rumors about the war. Isn't it too slow? Nami looked at the newspaper and muttered something. Not far from her, Yamato sat cross-legged on the floor, as if he was meditating. But after hearing Nami's muttered 617, Yamato spoke again. Uncle Orgrim must have said hello to that guy Morgans. At the same time, the Navy must have made corresponding arrangements. Runty, who was trimming her nails at the side, also said after hearing this, Master Chui has put his troops on Fishman Island. We are not far from Fishman Island now, let's join the war together. Sister, please stop making trouble, okay? Pejawin said without hesitation. When Runty, who was trimming her nails, heard this, she jumped up from her seat, sat directly on Pejawin's neck, pried off his head and said, Little Pei, are you too disrespectful to my sister? What does it mean to cause chaos? Let me go. Once a war breaks out, both sides will definitely invest their top power. On the Chambord Islands, haven't you seen General Polisalino? If we go, it will hold back Mr. Zui. Peggywan argued while struggling. No way, I am very powerful, Runty shouted. Not far away, leaning against the fence, there were 2 figures looking at the side with confused expressions, as if they didn't understand what they were discussing. These 2 people were none other than Yuzi Tusquid and the killing warrior Kira. Kid and Kira's younger brother were killed by Polisalino on the Chambord Islands. But Kid didn't care about this. Most of his subordinates were forced to do it by themselves. He came here and relied on his brutal style to maintain it. If it was gone, it would be gone, and he didn't feel bad at all. Speaking of which, this guy also had a strange temper. After being rescued by Runty and others, they tortured each other for a long time, and actually followed each other. Andrest and others became good friends. So they came to Fishman Island together and entered the New World together. But they were not planning to join the Evernight Pirates. After all, Kid was also a captain. Arrogant. So they currently only plan to say goodbye to Andrest and others after arriving at the next island, and go to sea again. Andrest can also be regarded as a friend of Kid. Although Kid is extremely cruel and has a lot of innocent blood on his hands. Andrest is not a good guy either. He grew up in a pirate den and his outlook on life is inherently crooked. Maybe he won't be like that. Kid does this, but he won't meddle in other people's business or dislike anything. What's more, their Avalon ruthless people are not more cruel than Kid. That bloody lion Rengar, but he is known as the Butcher. What are you guys saying? What does it mean to start a war? Kid asked with some surprise. Trafalgar Law just walked out of the cabin at this time, and sitting on his hat was Lily, a mini giant girl. Ah, you don't know yet. Although it's confidential, it's probably going to be in the newspapers soon. It's going to be a long journey and you won't be able to spread the news. Trafalgaro said this first, and Kid's face froze and he said, "No, if you don't say anything, why are you so weird?" Haha, Ludo, don't be like this. The watchtower on Ace's big mast jumped down. After landing, 2 sparks exploded. After a slight pause, he said, "Kid can't possibly reveal the news, right?" Kid curled his lips a little arrogantly, but finally nodded and said, "I'm not the kind of person who would betray a friend." Andress stood up at this moment, looked at the reflection above, and said with a smile, "There is no need to keep anything secret from Brother Kid, I can trust him." The Warhammer pirates are about to attack Marineford. Ace saw this and said with a smile, "The decisive battle between the Navy and pirates in the New World is about to begin." Ludo also nodded and said. Kid was confused for a while, and then Kid suddenly jumped up from the ground and said, "Then why do we want to enter the New World?" Lily sat on Ludo's head and asked in surprise, "You don't want to join the war, do you? Isn't that natural? From the beginning, this wasn't just about the Warhammer pirates, right? It's a showdown between pirates and Navy. As a pirate, how can you turn a blind eye? What's more, if you miss a war of this level, you will definitely regret it for the rest of your life," Kid said excitedly. In the original story of the battle on top of Marineford, all Kid's people were watching the show in the Chambord Islands. That's because that war was between the Whitebeard pirates and a war between the Navy. They have no position or reason to get involved. But this time is different. This time, it is a war between pirates and the Navy. Kid feels that as a good pirate in the new era, he ranks second in the supernova rankings. Bit, why do you want to mix it up? Andrest was also stunned for a moment after hearing Kid's words, and stopped wiping the blade. In fact, Andrest has always regarded himself as a junior. He believes that this war is the war of his father's generation, his father and his uncles and aunts. But at this moment, Kid's words made him suddenly enlightened. Yes. Dad did not explicitly prohibit me from participating in this war. At the same time, as Kid said, this is a war involving the entire pirate camp, and everyone is eligible to go. What's more, judging from the current arrangements, Dad already has the idea of coercing the pirates to go to war together. As his son, I didn't think this through. I really shouldn't have. Kid said it seems to make some sense, Andress said after thinking for a while. Hey, can you be normal? That's the Navy headquarters. Peggy Wan said quickly. Nami was also shocked and couldn't help but dissuade her. You don't really want to participate, do you? How many heads are there? Ace and Law looked at each other, and both saw some imminent feelings in each other's eyes. Ace is a person who likes to get involved in these things. Trafalgar Law, although more stable, but, young people after all. If you're not full of energy, are you still called a young person? Yamato didn't speak. She was still sitting there meditating. She didn't intend to have any opinions. She could just follow Andrest's choice. As for Runty, she was riding on Peggy Wan's head, waving her hands excitedly and saying, "Yes, this is a matter for the entire pirate camp, we are pirates too. Fuck the Navy." "But I don't know, is it too late to turn back now?" Andrest muttered again. "No matter what, you should give it a try, right?" Kid tried to persuade him again. He even made up his mind that if Andrest didn't go, he would return after the next island was separated. Anyway, he would definitely participate in this war. If you don't participate, you will regret it for the rest of your life. At this time, he was also a little lucky. Fortunately, he met Andrest and his group on the Chambord Islands, and they got along well and became friends. Otherwise, with their status, even if they are supernovas, they would probably it was impossible to come into contact with such secret information. Who would have thought that a war was about to break out in the seemingly calm sea? After thinking about it, Andrest said, "Yes, if you don't participate, it feels like I will regret it for the rest of my life. Nami, let me turn back now." After saying that, he looked at Nami, only to find that Nami looked stunned and looking at the sky. "Nami? What's wrong?" Andrest frowned slightly. At this moment, Yamato, who had been meditating with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. Yamato's expression also became a little surprised. When the others saw this, they also reacted and followed Nami's gaze. "Isn't it? What's happening here, Peggy?" Everyone is dumbfounded. "There is an island falling from the sky. Its ability, but it's not the Admiral's ability," Yamato said without hesitation. Andrest also stood up with a serious face and said, "It is indeed not the old man's ability. I am very familiar with that ability. Moreover, doesn't this island look familiar to you?" Kid looked over there with some disbelief, and then whispered softly, "Marineford, the Navy headquarters. How can it be? How could something like this happen?" It was Trafalgaro who reacted the fastest, and said quickly, "Quick, turn on the stealth mode, and be sure not to be discovered by the Navy, otherwise we will all be doomed. Run away." As soon as he finished speaking, Ace quickly ran behind him, grabbed the rudder, and pressed a button on it. Then, the water baffles on both sides of the cabin began to rise, and he quickly entered stealth mode. Nami also got up to work quickly. After a while, the small 0.3 entered the sea. Not long after, the current became violent. After all, it was a huge island. It fell on the sea and squeezed out. The currents quickly converged and turned into waves, gradually forming tsunamis and spreading in all directions. Marine Headquarters Marineford, airborne to the New World completed. Being swept away by the current and drifting into the deep sea in the distance, Andrest recalled what happened just now. His face darkened and he said, "Navy Headquarters, Havenview actually arrived in the New World. There may be a major deviation in Dad's plan." Runty had already taken out the phone bug at this time and said, "The most urgent task is to report this matter to Mr. Chui first, right? Maybe we don't have to go back. There is a high probability that the war will break out here." "That's right. Report the news to Dad first. It's incredible. Navy, he actually played such a trick," Andrest said quickly. "In fact, it doesn't mean much at this time, because in Marineford, the Warring States Marshal has authorized Sakaski to formally contact the News of the World to airborne the Navy headquarters into the New World, and in a week later, the news about the execution of Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach, captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, was released. When Marineford fell, there was no longer any need for the Navy to cover up. On the contrary, it is right to start the war as soon as possible. Falou reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. Support Filu Novel Network, b.faloo.com. Original works. All the you are listening to novels at Bless Up channel wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 736. At the News of the World headquarters, Morgans was looking at the latest news that had just been sent from the Navy headquarters Marineford on the fax machine. Others were also a little stupid. Because this news is really exciting. Previously, he was invited to Avalon and met with Orgrim. Therefore, he was mentally prepared for the upcoming war, and he also knew that the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, the guy named Teach, was captured by the Navy. The Navy will most likely use this as an excuse to start a war against the Whitebeard Pirates. He was mentally prepared for these. In the news in hand, the Navy did mention this matter. He was also clearly informed that a week later, Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach would be publicly executed at Marine Headquarters Marineford. These are not much different from what he knows. Of course he wasn't surprised by this. What surprised him was the second message from the Navy immediately after. Marine Headquarters Marineford has been relocated and is located in the New World Gateway C, together with G-3 G-4. The naval fortress is a tripartite force integrating attack and defense. The Navy headquarters has stood in the first half of the Grand Line for 800 years. It has built a trinity of offensive and defensive systems with the island of judiciary that never sleeps and the iron wall of Imperialton. Marineford is known as the base camp of justice. Why did you come to the New World so quietly? Soon, a trace of worry appeared in Morgan's eyes. If Master Chui didn't lie to him, it meant that this was completely inconsistent with Master Chui's battle plan. But this worry was suppressed by Morgan's in an instant. With a snap, he raised his hand and gave himself a big mouthful. Morgan's, you are so distracted that you dare to worry about everything. How the Hammers fight with the Navy is none of your business, Morgan's muttered at first. Then, the worry turned into excitement. Yes, how does the Warhammer pirates fight with the Navy? What does it have to do with Morgan's? He just needs to do what both sides have told him to do. Don't offend anyone. On the contrary, this is really big news that has rarely been seen in 800 years, so we must arrange it carefully. Quick, Morgan's shouted. His younger brother quickly walked up to Morgan's. President, do you have any plans? The younger brother asked quickly. Hurry up and print urgent special editions of these two pieces of news. I want them to appear in newspapers tomorrow. All newspaper offices and branches all over the world must publish them at the same time. I want these two big news to be spread all over the world tomorrow. Go quickly without delay, Morgan said excitedly. As soon as he finished speaking, he handed over the news of the Navy headquarters airborne landing in New World and Teach's execution to his subordinate. After hearing the words, the younger brother nodded quickly and said, "Yes, President, leave it to me." After that, he turned around and was about to leave. But Morgan said again, "Wait a minute." Then, Morgans walked behind his desk, pulled out a safe, entered a long series of complex passwords, and opened the safe with a self-destruction device. Then, Morgans took out another document from inside. It was before that when he met Orgrim in Avalon. The Pirate Alliance declaration that Orgrim finally gave him. This declaration hid too many things, so before these things happened, Morgans didn't dare to tell anyone, so he secretly hid it in the safe. And now, it's time for this declaration to come out. Come on, you can take this too, every other day, do you understand? The two pieces of news just came out in the newspaper one day apart, and I want them to spread all over the world. Morgan said with a somewhat excited tone. The boy quickly took the declaration document, nodded seriously and said, "Yes, President." After the young man left, Morgans wandered around in his office for a while, looking restless. He was thinking about whether he should go to Marineford to see such a big scene in person. This is quite a few times. It is a top-level competition that may not be seen for 100 years. I am afraid that in the world today, among the famous masters, 9 out of 10 will appear. A cutting-edge showdown between the two camps. This is both really big news and a very dangerous place. No one dares to say that it is dangerous to go there for a swim. Should I go or not? Morgans was thinking in his mind. In the end, he still wanted to go and see it. Isn't my reputation in this big news wasted in vain? Wrong. You should inform Mr. Chui of the news first, and it will be a good sale. Morgan suddenly thought of something. If he wants to stay in the news for a long time, he must maintain a relatively good relationship with all parties. Although the Navy's plans and actions at this time have nothing to do with it exceeded his expectation. But he didn't think that Master Chui would definitely fail. It's better to sell well first. If Master Chui won, wouldn't he be able to do better in the new world? Thinking of this, Morgans quickly took out the phone and dialed Orgrim without saying a word. After a while, Orgrim's voice came from the phone. Morgans. Is there a problem? Orgrim asked softly. Morgans listened carefully, and it seemed that there was the sound of sea wind and waves over there. It seemed that Lord Hammer, who had been stationary in Avalon for a long time, seemed to have taken action. But he didn't say much. Thinking and speculating about something, he quickly adjusted his tone, and with a sense of panic, he said, Master Chui, something serious is going wrong. Navy side. Ah, you are very well informed about the Navy headquarters Marineford's parachute landing in the New World, right? Orgrim smiled and said. Morgans. Master Hammer actually knows. This is ridiculous. Is there something wrong with the Navy? Didn't I say that I was the first person to know the news? In fact, just 3 or 2 minutes ago, Orgrim received a message from his son. Only then did he realize how courageous that guy from the Warring States period was. He actually flew the Navy headquarters Marineford directly to the New World. Yes, this is the thing that scared me to death. I thought you didn't know about it, Mr. Chui, so after I received the news from over there, I came to report it to you as soon as possible. I see you clearly. I felt relieved, Morgan said quickly. He obviously arranged to report it as soon as possible, but he said that he reported it to Orgrim as soon as possible. When Orgrim heard this, he laughed. He didn't care whether Morgan said it was true or not, as long as his attitude was correct, it would be fine, right? You guys, do you want to be on my side? Orgrim asked with a smile. When Morgans heard this, he didn't hesitate in his heart and immediately said, isn't that natural? Our world news is based on the New World. Mr. Hammer, you are the master of the New World, what to do with this interest? Send it out. He had already arranged to send it, but at this time, he still asked Orgrim seriously, as if everything was following Orgrim's lead. But in fact, Morgans also had a plan in mind. He knew very well that Orgrim it is impossible for Grim to stop him from releasing this information. Therefore, he will seize every opportunity to express himself to Orgrim. This is his way of survival as Morgans. As expected, Orgrim also I don't know if he really thought that Morgans was one of his own, or if he didn't care about it at all. Orgrim said very casually, just do whatever the Navy wants you to do. Don't pay attention to me. The declaration I gave you, follow it and send it out together, do you understand? Yes, Master Chui, I understand, Morgan said with some satisfaction in his heart. Look, it's exactly what I thought. Well, thanks to you this time, I still have things to do, so please contact me more in the future, Orgrim said softly. Morgans did not dare to ask what Orgrim was going to do, although he was extremely curious. How would the overlord of the New World deal with this combination of punches from the Navy? On the other side, in a certain sea area of the New World, a small ship was also sailing on the sea. Orgrim was sitting on the deck of the ship at this time, placing the phone bug he had just hung up on a side. On the table. Ha ha ha, this guy Morgan is really cunning, Orgrim smiled, shook his head and said. Doesn't he seem quite loyal? Monet asked from the side. If he has any loyalty at all, he is not worthy of being the president of the news of the world, Orgrim waved his hand. He didn't take what Morgan said just now to heart. Of course, there is no need to expose Itkins, that makes everyone look bad, so why bother? That's fine now. Orgrim left Avalon at the same time as Hancock and Sphinx. Sphinx, Hancock, and others led the army to Fishman Island. Orgrim, on the other hand, is wandering around in the New World near the Portal Sea. He is waiting for the response from the world government. Yes, it may sound a bit unbelievable. He, the biggest enemy who wants to go against the Navy, was invited by the Navy's boss, the 5 Old Stars, to secretly go to Marineford. Just say it's outrageous or not. Sengoku probably never dreamed that Orgrim would use this method to enter his naval headquarters, right? The current situation is like this. The 5 Old Stars have confirmed that Lord Im is willing to go to the Marineford front. The reason is unknown. Maybe he is bored and wants to see the excitement. Therefore, the Bald King will form a secret team and take Lord Im into Marijoya. He himself will also be involved in this matter. On the warring states side, they also received a notice saying that one of the 5 Old Stars would come to stabilize the morale of the troops and supervise the war. He had no reason or position to refuse this. Fortunately, Wu Laoxing didn't have many accompanying members, only about 10 people. It's okay to make some arrangements. After they both reached a consensus, Orgrim received the invitation from the Bald King. Yes, he is one of the members of this team. He didn't know how the money would be arranged specifically. However, the Bald King said that he would contact him here, and he had not revealed to him the relocation of Marineford, the Navy headquarters, before. Orgrim had previously thought that he was going to meet him here, and then take him secretly to Marijoya, and from Marijoya to Marineford. Now that I know it, I don't need to go to Marijoya at all, I can just return to the team and enter Marineford. However, judging from time and other angles, it is estimated that the day he entered Marineford was the day of execution and the time when the war broke out. Therefore, it seems that there is nothing that can be used and assisted in the war. But it doesn't matter. Being able to enter Marineford like this is an extraordinary method. Warring States period, Ogum thought about Sengoku, his old rival who had been entangled with him for half his life. I also admire him in my heart. He is really a powerful guy. You can definitely call this Generalissimo your lifelong enemy. Marineford parachuted into the new world, and the tactics and strategies are about to change. Fortunately, in terms of distance, the fishmen are not very far from the coordinates of the old and new naval headquarters. It is enough to catch up, Ogum thought to himself again. Although there is a big deviation, fortunately, I haven't really done it yet and I can still make corrections. If now an army of 200,000 people led the top experts from the two families to the original location of Marineford, and found that there was nothing there, looking back, the Navy headquarters had opened in the New World, what the hell awkward. Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading, collect, recommend, and share. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 737. After sitting on the deck and thinking carefully for a while, Orgrim finally breathed a sigh of relief. Marineford's parachute landing in the New World had an impact, but the impact was not that great. The most fearful thing is that this guy from the Warring States period became so cruel that he parachuted Marineford next to Avalon and destroyed his own lair. That would be truly terrifying, because the elite forces from Avalon have already headed to Fishman Island. It is impossible to defend against the Navy. Fortunately, Sengoku did not take such a risky route, because Sengoku was not sure what Orgrim was doing. What if after it passes, it will just be given away for free? The current situation is nothing more than a change of battle location. From the original Marineford to the current Marineford. The most critical thing about this transformation is whether it can be done in time. The most fundamental tactics of the Warring States Marshal were to be fast, accurate and ruthless. Orgrim has now seen this. And coincidentally, my own moves followed this path. Just enough to catch up can break the move. The overall arrangement is still within my control, but some minor accidents occurred and the battle location was changed. Fortunately, the Warring States period is stable enough. If Sakaski is replaced as the Marshal, he might be able to use Marineford's face-mounting output for me, Grim whispered softly. After thinking about it, Orgrim began to pass on the news to his subordinates and asked Beckman to make new response arrangements. Generally speaking, there is no need to change. The army can just fight directly from Fishman Island back to the Navy headquarters in the New World. In the following days, the world changed, and the sea surface, which was originally quiet, suddenly became turbulent. 99% of the people in the sea were confused. In the past, before a war started, there were still traces to follow. Even 3 to 5 months in advance, conflicts of all sizes will continue to break out, and eventually they will accumulate into a war. During this period, people from all walks of life will feel the footsteps of war, so as to make your own responses and arrangements. But this time, it was obviously the most top-notch war contest in decades, or even centuries, but when it came to an end, there was no sound at all. It was all in the newspapers before everyone realized that a war was about to begin. The sea suddenly became a mess. This time, it really happened. Even if you hide at the end of the world, there will be no safe place. First, the news that Navy headquarters Marineford had officially been located in the New World swept the world like a storm. Then, Don Quixote and Doflamingo were directly deprived of the title of King Shichibukai. Restored as an outlaw pirate, Teniasha Don Quixote Doflamingo. Immediately afterwards, there is even more breaking news. The Navy headquarters is about to publicly execute Blackbeard Marshal Dichi, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. On the surface, this is about the execution of pirates, and it doesn't seem like a big deal. After all, there are countless pirates who die, and how many pirates are born on the sea every day. But now, everyone can see that this is the Navy headquarters' declaration of war against the Whitebeard pirates. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves, and the series of actions of the Navy headquarters were indeed beyond the expectations of the world. But just when everyone thought that the pirate camp was caught off guard by the Navy, the newspaper came out on the 3rd day. Pirate Alliance Declaration. The pirate overlord of the New World, known as the strongest man, the strongest among the Yonko, and the king of the night, Khazgarot Orgrim, spoke publicly in the newspaper. Published the declaration of the New World Pirate Alliance, and as the captain of the Warhammer Pirates, invited the Whitebeard Pirates, Beast Pirates, Crocodile Pirates, and many fellow pirates in the New World to form a war alliance. Officially declared war with the Navy headquarters. Once this declaration comes out, it can only mean that after the Navy headquarters declared war on the Whitebeard Pirates, the Warhammer Pirates took the initiative to officially declare war on the Navy headquarters. All the forces at sea are waiting and watching. Is this Orgrim a one-man show, or what is going on? Will anyone respond? If there is, that proves that the thieves' camp was not unprepared to be attacked by the sea. Orgrim had also made preparations. Sure enough, this matter was quickly proved. Whitebeard Ai Newgate, the strongest man before, who had had many conflicts with the Warhammer Pirates, was the first to stand up and voice his support for this Pirate Alliance declaration, officially announcing that the Whitebeard Pirates during the war, the group will form an alliance with the Warhammer Pirates and become New World Pirates to jointly fight against the despicable home invaders, the Navy headquarters. Immediately afterwards, Kaido of the Beast Pirates also officially recognized this declaration of alliance and will form an alliance with the Warhammer Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates. The three parties will work together to declare war on the Navy headquarters. These two are not unexpected. After all, Whitebeard's son had been captured, and he had to fight with the Navy. Now that Orgrim is here as a strong support, he has no reason not to accept the alliance. Kaido, not to mention, is a veteran of the Warhammer Pirates. Both of them have been wearing the same pants for almost 20 years, so there is nothing surprising. What's more, Kaido is the kind of character who likes to participate in these messy things. What was really unexpected was that Crocodile did not hesitate at all. He followed Kaido and Whitebeard and made a voice of support. announced that the crocodile pirates will participate in this pirate alliance. During the war, they will form an alliance with the other three families, vowing to drive the navy out of the New World and return a peaceful world to the New World pirates. This time, everyone was shocked. The Yonko pirates are united for the first time in history, and they are going to fight the damn navy together. The New World is originally the world of the four emperors, and most of the other pirates, big and small, depend on the four pirate emperors to survive. Now that their bosses have announced that they will form a pirate alliance, how dare they not follow through? Therefore, pirate groups of all sizes in the New World have threatened to support the Pirate Alliance Declaration and conclude alliances and so on, shouting to drive the despicable navy out of the New World. In this way, the originally chaotic New World quickly became a rope in a very short period of time. Of course, Orgrim didn't expect these bastards to join him in fighting Marineford. It was too late, and the rabble would probably drag them down. However, in addition to Marineford, the Navy has two other fortresses in the New World, as well as the G-5 army in the New World. There are also dozens of newly built branch bases of the Navy, large and small, in the New World. These are the goals reserved for those pirate groups who have formed a pirate alliance. In such a big war, why should we give them some sense of participation? At the same time, the more important significance of this alliance lies in the aftermath. Once Orgrim's attack on Marineford fails, the Navy's follow-up plan will inevitably be to continuously increase troops in the New World to give full play to their huge military advantage. The Warhammer Pirates family will definitely not be able to resist. When the time comes, this declaration of alliance, which is recognized by 89% of the pirates in the New World, will be a weapon against the Navy. My family doesn't have enough pirates, but there are thousands of pirates in the New World, right? Not to mention driving your Navy out, but it is always okay to give our boss pirate group time to gain strategic depth and a chance to regroup, right? This is the true meaning of the Pirate Alliance. At least in this war, it can twist the pirate forces into one rope. Take advantage of the pirates' numerical advantage to prevent them from being completely defeated by the Navy in one fell swoop. This is Orgrim's deep meaning for the Pirate Alliance. Asking for flowers. But at this time, he did not expect the subsequent historical impact of this pirate alliance on the entire pirate camp. This is the first time in hundreds or thousands of years that the pirate forces have truly come together. Naturally, it has had a great impact on future generations. It has even become a convention. Whenever the Navy recuperates and regains its peak strength, and wants to attack the New World, the pirate heroes of that era will stand up and use the Pirate Alliance as a model to unite the sea of the New World. Thief power, beat the Navy. This resulted in the Navy being unable to capture the New World for a long time to come. At the same time, the creation of the Pirate Alliance also had a great impact on the Warhammer Pirates and the Avalon family. It is not highlighted now, but there is no doubt that the prestige of the Warhammer Pirates and the status of Avalon in the pirate camp have become more consolidated and elevated. So much so that Beckman's pirate nation building plan has made great progress. Marine Headquarters Marineford. In the office of the Warring States Marshal, he was breathing the air of the New World. After all his busy work, he should be in a great mood. But looking at the newspapers and intelligence information in his hands, the Navy Generalissimo did not feel any joy. On the contrary, there was a strong pressure in his heart, which made him breathless. 0. Pirate Alliance. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves. How could the scattered pirate forces in the New World be united in such a short period of time? This is crazy. What made him even more uneasy was that it was obvious that the four emperors' bosses like Orgrim were prepared for the war and raid launched by the Navy. I don't know if the news leaked out, or if they were already prepared for war, but the Navy just caught the opportunity and crashed into the New World. But there is no doubt that Senguo would not take any chances. He speculated on the worst-case scenario. That is, the Navy's plan to quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly wipe out the Whitebeard pirates has been foiled. In a few days, Marineford will not be facing the Whitebeard pirates in a hasty battle. Instead, the Whitebeard pirates are ready to go, even supported by powerful allies. A planned battle of annihilation may very well turn into a head-on battle. In just 4 days, the situation suddenly changed to this point. The advantage that the Navy had originally gained was suddenly lost, leaving the warring States Marshal very confused. What went wrong? I was obviously the one who made the first move, right? Why are you pirates so skilled at dealing with it? After thinking about it, Marshal Warring States still didn't understand what was wrong. It can be said that the Navy has done a very good job and there are no major flaws. In the end, he could only attribute it to bad luck, which happened to coincide with Orgrim's arrangement. But now that the matter has come to this, he can't see that something is wrong and let Fujitora smile and move Marineford back to the first half of the Grand Line, right? Fortunately, he was stable enough and did not let down any vigilance. He used all the strength of the Navy and prepared to go all out to annihilate the Whitebeard pirates. Now, it's nothing more than the enemy becoming stronger and better prepared. However, the Navy has not lost yet. The strength of the Navy is still stronger. This war, yes, the winner has not yet been announced, and the two sides have not really competed yet. Okay, just fight them openly and kill those evil bastards. If you win, it will further demonstrate the power of my Navy. Marshal Warring States quickly changed his mind and said to himself. He was not comforting himself. This is indeed the case. If the Navy launches that kind of fast, accurate and ruthless raid, although the chance of winning is greater, it will inevitably be at risk. The pattern has fallen behind. And if you can win in such a head-to-head battle, that is really awesome. No one can be unconvinced. _Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. Support Follow Novel Network, b.fallow.com. Original works, All a Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 738. Just 1 week passed quickly. On this day, the Navy headquarters was covered with flags, and in Justice Square, there were hundreds of thousands of Navy troops ready for battle. The entire Marineford has also become an armed fortress, with all large and small artillery set up. At the same time, there are also a large number of warships guarding the surrounding waters. It's like a war fortress. I don't know how many lives it will take to capture this place. A towering execution platform was set up behind the Square of Justice, connected to the Fortress of Justice in Marineford. The execution platform was empty at this time. Under the execution platform, there are 3 chairs. There is no doubt that this is the throne reserved for the Admiral of the Navy headquarters. The hundreds of thousands of naval officers on the square were arranged in a stepped military formation. In the first sequence, standing were various lieutenant generals from the Navy headquarters, all of them majestic and full of momentum. Don't look at it, the lieutenant generals seem to be a little weak in front of the top masters. But the lieutenant general of this headquarters has always been the mainstay of the Navy. Especially in large-scale wars, the various lieutenant generals are proficient in tacit coordinated attack skills, and their strength explodes, becoming quite powerful. Next to each lieutenant general, there will be 2 rear admirals escorting them. Behind the 2 rear admirals, there is a commodore from the Navy headquarters. At this point, an elite combat team is formed as a unit of 5 people, with the lieutenant general as the pressure-resistant leader and a tacit understanding of joint attack skills. It is a commonly used tactical combat unit in the Navy. It's quite powerful. Generally speaking, there are 3 to 5 billion pirates who can't defeat this kind of combat team. Different from the original story, during the original battle on the top, the one placed in the first order by the Navy was the Shishibukai organization. It can be seen from their positions that, first, the Navy headquarters does not believe in the loyalty of King Shishibukai, so it absolutely does not dare to arrange them in the military formation, lest they suddenly rebel. Second, the Navy headquarters is using Oshikibukai as cannon fodder, standing on the front line and experiencing the most brutal confrontation. But now, the front line combat units are the elite lieutenants of the Navy headquarters. In addition, within the military formation led by each headquarters lieutenant general, there are also 2 branch lieutenant generals from various branches of the Navy. It can be seen how determined the Navy was in responding to this battle. The second step below the military formation is the stronger Navy boss. For example, Fujitora Yuxiao, Cha Daogai, the former General Zifa, the great staff officer Ahei, etc. are all arrayed here. Then, beside them, there were 2 Shishibukai under the king who were selected to participate in this war. They are the tyrant Bartholomew Bear and the red-haired Shanks. On the last level of the military formation, there are only 2 big bosses of the Navy headquarters, namely Navy Hero Garp and Navy Headquarters Chief Inspector Momo Yosagi Jun. This can be regarded as the last line of defense of the Navy. Once these 2 are gone, the 3 generals of the Navy headquarters, Sakazuki, Porisalino, and Kyuzan, are known to have the highest combat power. Will be completely exposed to the edge of war. As for the Generalissimo warring states, he will personally sit on the execution platform. Today's weather seems to be very good, it can be said to be cloudless and the sun is like fire. It was sunny. Although the Navy's military formations have been set up, the execution time has not yet arrived, and live broadcast equipment has been set up on many rooftops. Yes, this is about Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach's execution will be broadcast live around the world to demonstrate the power of the Navy and its firm determination to attack the New World. Shanks, who was standing in the second sequence, looked at the mighty force of the Navy and was filled with emotion. After all, he had been the maritime overlord for 800 years and his heritage was profound. The entire Marineford has probably invested nearly 300,000 troops, right? Most of them are elites at the general and school level, which is amazing. On land in Marineford, there are about 200,000 Marines ready for battle, and there must be hundreds of warships on the sea, right? This time, the total amount is almost 300,000. Shanks even felt that if we did not continue to increase the number of troops, Marineford would become extremely crowded, and the various naval bosses would be unable to perform their duties, and it would be easy for the top masters to overwhelm them. Maybe the Navy could still come up with a lot more elites. Come. While sighing in his heart, Shanks was also a little uneasy. The opponents are Whitebeard and the strongest king of the night, Hosgarot Orgrim. Neither of them is easy to get along with, especially the king of the night. Shanks came in and out of the New World several times, and was kicked out of the New World almost every time without seeing Orgrim's face. One can imagine how much shadow he had on Orgrim. But that wasn't the main thing, because he felt something was wrong with the inducement of this war. Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach, this was a guy who was unknown not long ago, but Shanks recognized him. Whenever he thought of him, he felt the scars on the corners of his eyes aching faintly. That's a great guy, no one should underestimate him. But this guy was caught by 3 vice admirals from the Navy headquarters in the New World and executed publicly. This is not right even when you think about it. You said it was enough for a general to take action, but 3 vice admirals? Shanks felt that this was a bit insulting to his wounds. Is that Teach a man who can easily lose to the vice admiral? Definitely not. But, he was caught like this, led to this war. Shanks felt something was wrong, very wrong. But he was a pirate after all, so he only figured everything out after arriving at Marineford and reading the newspaper. There were doubts and doubts in his heart, but he was unable to participate in the decision-making of the Navy headquarters, let alone express his doubts. In this war, he is positioned as a powerful fighter recruited by the Navy headquarters. As long as he contributes, he is not needed to make suggestions. Even if he had a chance to say it, would the Navy believe what he said as a pirate? So far, Shanks is still keeping silent. After brushing away these thoughts in his mind, Shanks looked at Fujitora beside him and smiled. He was holding 2 dice in his hand and playing with them. He didn't look nervous at all. Lieutenant General Yuxiao, after the war is over, do you want to play 2 games together? Shanks said with a smile. Fujitora also laughed, nodded, and said then I will definitely agree. On the other side, Jun and Garp also walked out of the headquarters fortress, walked all the way through the execution platform, and came to the place where they needed to sit. Garp's hair was a little gray, but today he was dressed very formally, with a strong body that almost burst the gray and white suit. The cloak of justice with the rank of lieutenant general was fluttering in the wind behind him. In the original story, it was Ace who was going to be executed. Is Garp's adopted grandson. Therefore, this naval hero's performance in the war can no longer be described as bad. It is simply bad. At that time, his mood was naturally quite bad. But it's different this time. This execution has nothing to do with him, Garp. Naturally, he won't be so entangled in his mood. If a fight really breaks out, he will go all out. After all, it's the old Navy, and he is obviously about to face it. Despite a shocking battle, Garp still seemed very calm and happy, not nervous at all. He held a pack of senbei in his hand and kept eating it. Not to mention, just look at his posture, the surrounding Navy also involuntarily dispersed some of their nervousness. Ha 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 ha, Jun, it's time to meet your old flame, are you nervous? Garp was eating while teasing Jun. Jun looked as beautiful as a fairy today. His beautiful long black hair was tied up with a hairpin on the back of his head. There was no trace of beauty on his delicate face. It requires too much makeup, just a touch of bright red lip color. She is beautiful and graceful. She is wearing a pink women's suit, which outlines her slim figure. At the same time, she has wearing a famous sword, it is Jinbaluo. The cloak of justice with the epaulets of a general flutters in the wind. At first glance, it is infinitely charming and heroic. After listening to Garp's teasing words, Jun calmly took it out of his suit pocket. He took out a pack of women's cigarettes, took one out and bit it in his mouth, glanced at Garp, lit the cigarette, and said this battle is the best chance to defeat Orgrim in my life, do you think I'm nervous? Nervous, after Garp thought for a moment, he answered. Jun exhaled a puff of smoke at this time, and said with a slight curl of the corner of his mouth no, on the contrary, I am looking forward to it, and I am in a very happy mood. It's really your style, Garp muttered while eating senbei. After a slight pause, he shook his head and said, but don't get too happy too early. No one knows what the tactics of the Warhammer pirates are. Orgrim won't show up, that's just a guess. In today's battle, the main target is still Whitebeard. That's true, Jun nodded. After flicking the ashes from his cigarette, Jun asked again, what do you think is the chance of winning today? Garp was stunned for a moment when he heard this. He swallowed all the senbei in his mouth. After pondering for a while, he said, if it is just the Whitebeard pirates, I am 100% sure that it will win. That Newgate collapsed here. Jun also nodded naturally, expressing his approval. With the current posture and lineup of the Navy, it seems that Newgate is not able to fight against it. After a short pause, Garp continued, if the Warhammer pirates are here, it's hard to tell. What if Orgrim comes in person? Having said this, Garp shook his head and said, I'm not sure either. Orgrim has now reached the ceiling of his strength, and Garp doesn't know how strong that bastard is. What kind of changes can this kind of power bring? So he can't be sure. Does the hero Garp also have such worries? Jun smiled, breaking up the slightly depressing atmosphere. Garp also laughed after hearing this, waved his hand and said, there is no such thing as a hero, I am just an ordinary marine. Ordinary, Jun murmured. She looked at Marineford's mighty military strength at this time, including hundreds of thousands of naval elites. She finally nodded and said, "Yes, you and I are just among the hundreds of thousands of naval elites. One of them." Garp didn't answer. He folded the empty bag in his hand and stuffed it into his pocket. Then he rolled up his sleeves, glanced at the watch he was wearing, smacked his lips and said, "We're almost there, time." As soon as he finished speaking, as expected, there was movement again in the Fortress of Justice behind him. Two executioners escorted a slightly fat figure in front. The supreme leader of the Navy headquarters, Grand Marshal Sengoku, holding a phone bug, followed at the back. Several people walked step by step from the Marineford Fortress to the execution platform. It seemed that what Garp was talking about was not the execution time, but the time for the prisoner to take the stage. There is no doubt that the person being escorted, the man who took the stage, was none other than Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach. Walking on the steps of the execution platform, from both sides, Teach could see countless Navy arrayed here, and he felt uneasy in his heart. He or she, I don't know if he can survive this time, Teach cursed secretly in his heart. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 739. He climbed to the top of the execution platform and looked at the countless Navy under the execution platform. Teach sat down cross-legged. Logically speaking, he should be sitting here kneeling. However, neither the Warring States Marshal nor the two executioners on the side spoke to stop anything. Debugging live call bugs, Marshal Warring States said to the phone bug in his hand. After he finished speaking, he didn't speak anymore. Standing on the towering execution platform, the Navy Marshal also felt a sense of ambition in his heart. There is a large army in this way, justice can be done. Unlike the Warring States Marshal, Tikai's eyes gradually gained some inexplicable brilliance at this time. He originally thought that he should be a ruthless person. After all, he should be regarded as an ambitious person. Disciple. For the sake of his own ambitions and plans, he can give up everything. But at this moment, looking at the hundreds of thousands of sailors in front of him, he felt something different in his heart. Even if his father hasn't come yet, but he must also know what he will face after coming here, right? It is impossible for the Whitebeard pirates to defeat such a lineup. Others may not know, but he knows very well that his father, his body has long since weakened. His strength has also been reduced a lot. After all, my father has suffered countless injuries during his lifetime of fighting. As he gets older and has many old injuries, he can no longer suppress them. After he left, at that time, Dad had already started hanging medicine bottles. But even if this is the case, his father will definitely come to save him, right? When I think of this, why does my heart, which should have been extremely cold for a long time, feel a little guilty and uneasy? No. This must be an illusion. I'm Tiki. How could I not even know what kind of bastard I am? Tikai forced down the guilt and uneasiness in his heart. He is a bastard who will do anything for the secret fruit. How could he be upset by this? He must have not slept well these days, think too much. Just as Tiki was soothing his uneasy heart, a report came from the phone bug in the hand of the Warring States Marshal. Report to the Marshal, the live phone bug has been debugged, there are no faults, and it can be used. Marshal Warring States nodded naturally, and then said to the phone bug, start the live broadcast. With a click, the phone bug in his hand seemed to switch to another mode. Then, the live broadcast of Marineford's execution was connected to live broadcast equipment around the world. At this time, in the square of the Shampoo Islands, he was sitting on the roof of an old house. He was holding his own small wine bottle in his hand, and his clothes were a little sloppy. His flip-flops were hanging on his feet, as if he might fall off the roof at any time. He looked at the live broadcast equipment of the Shampoo Islands not far away. At this time, a large number of reporters had gathered there, and they seemed to be waiting for this moment. When the display screen lit up, Laylee's thoughts were in a trance for a moment. It's like going back 20 years ago. At that time, he was sitting here, in the same position, and even the small wine bottle in his hand was the same wine bottle from back then. At that time, it was a live broadcast in Rogertown, a live broadcast of Roger's execution. He just sat here quietly, watching Roger as he rushed to the execution ground. His figure did not look like a prisoner at all, but rather like a king on the throne. That day, Roger started the Great Pirate Era. In a blink of an eye, 20 years have passed. Today, it is the strongest dam that the tide of the times has touched. If the pirates win this battle, the Great Pirate Age will reach its climax, and the whole world will fall into an even more chaotic and turbulent era. At the same time, if the Navy wins this battle, the era of great pirates that has swept the world for 20 years will also completely decline today. The era created by Roger will end here. The tide of the times, how far will it go? Orgrim, you really deserve to be a trendsetter of this era, Rayleigh whispered softly. 20 years ago, Orgrim let out his roar in Rogtown, and then he fought his way through all obstacles until he reached the top and became the strongest pirate. 20 years later, Orgrim will start a showdown between the Navy and the pirates in Marineford, and completely control this era. Just as Rayleigh's thoughts continued, the voice of the Marine Marshal from Marineford came from the broadcasting equipment of the Shampoo Islands. It has been 20 years since the Great Pirate Era. Countries have been in turmoil and the world is uneasy. They have held high the false flag of freedom and committed evil deeds. There are countless people who have fallen into pirates. These are all kinds of things. They are actually our Navy. Failure to do so will bring disgrace to justice. In the past 20 years, tens of millions of righteous people from top to bottom of the Navy have been saddened by this. However, the evil tide of the times cannot be resisted by one-time force. In the past 20 years, our Navy has been filled with guilt and uneasiness. We have used this as nourishment, strengthened our troops, and forged ahead, and finally achieved the trend we have today. The Marshal of the Warring States period spoke with great emotion about the journey of his Navy over the past 20 years. All these things were really sad to hear and made the listeners cry. Generalissimo, he is not exaggerating. It tells the true experiences of the Navy. Since the Great Pirate Era, the number of naval sacrifices has skyrocketed, although they were unable to stem the tide of this era in time. But no one can say that the Navy violated its own justice. While the bright red blood dyes justice red, it is also recasting justice with this righteous heart that goes on and never ends. I have to say that this speech by the Warring States Marshal really had an inspiring effect. Hundreds of thousands of righteous people at Marine Headquarters Marineford, listening to the speech of their general, only felt a fire burning in their hearts. That is the heart of justice, the heart of justice that protects the world. There is never a shortage of evil pirates in this sea. They burn, kill, loot, and do all kinds of evil. They do evil things in the name of freedom. The leaders include Casgarot Orgrim and Edward Newgate. This is not something that cannot be admitted. Orgrim never claims to be a good person, he admits his evil. Perhaps he was forced to do this by the times and the world, but he never used this as an excuse. I am inherently evil, why do I need so many excuses? If you don't accept it, just come and fight. He is a complete believer in strength and has no regard for justice or evil. Only strength and power, in his opinion, are the truth. In this world, he is evil. However, there is never a shortage of righteous navy in this sea. They punish rape and eliminate evil, protect the world, use iron and blood to create peace and maintain stability in the world. The leaders include the Warring States period, GARP, and thousands of officers and soldiers in the Navy. Maybe some of them are pedantic, some are decisive, and some are weak. Be as firm as Sakaski, believe in absolute justice, believe in crying as a family all the way, and never compromise in the face of evil. Swinging like Kuzan, I believe that justice will continue to change with the position and perspective, and when facing evil, I will truly think about the essence. Yu Zhong stands with Porosalino and sticks to the ambiguous justice. He may seem like a salty fish, but at the critical moment, he will never stand idly by. No matter how different their interpretations of justice are, there is no doubt that it is the tens of thousands of Marines and their different understanding and thinking of justice that truly condenses the justice of the Navy. No matter how controversial the justice of the Navy is, no one can deny that on this sea, from beginning to end, the only one who always implements justice is the Navy. After 20 years of hard work, we have gathered the elites of the Navy here, and will not do anything else. Today, the Navy will roar 20 years late, declaring war on the evil in the world. Our Navy will be determined to take back the New World and end it. This great age of pirates is to restore the world and bring peace to the world. In the name of the Navy, in the name of justice, and in the name of the Marshal, our Warring States period declares, justice will win. When the Warring States Marshal said this, he suddenly raised his arms and said everything is for justice. As soon as the Grand Marshal finished speaking, the fire in the hearts of Marineford's hundreds of thousands of sailors suddenly vented out. Everything, for justice. Everything, for justice. Everything, for justice. At the same time, navies from all over the world who were watching the live broadcast shouted loudly, justice will prevail, everything is for justice. The morale of the military is available. At this time, the sky above the Navy headquarters seems to be ignited by this burning breath of justice. Hundreds of thousands of naval officers and officers can die generously for justice. This is how the Navy has been based on the sea for 800 years. Countless a righteous man, a military soul poured out with blood. These roars made all the villains watching the live broadcast feel miserable. They couldn't help but feel that the Navy seemed to be really invincible. There were even those who had no faith. Those who are determined think that otherwise, they should leave the pirate industry. At this time, Teach stared blankly at the countless naval officers whose military hearts and souls were mobilized by the Grand Marshal beside him. To be honest, most of the big pirate groups who have reached their level have a contemptuous mentality of looking down on the Navy. I always feel that the Navy is just like that. But today, sitting on this execution platform, Teach felt the burning fighting spirit at his fingertips. For the first time, the feeling of the Navy's invincibility arose in his heart. At the same time, he felt increasingly uneasy and guilty. Dad, if you were smarter, you shouldn't have come, don't come, Tiki thought in his heart. And the next moment, he woke up suddenly. If his father didn't come, wouldn't he be dead? But at this time, I actually had the idea that he shouldn't come, so don't come. What does this mean? Does it mean that subconsciously, even if you think that you will die here, you will occasionally have the idea of defending your father? Humanity, it's really complicated, Teach smiled helplessly. At this moment, he was actually a little unsure about what kind of bastard he was. On the Chambord Islands, Rayleigh looked at the determined fighting spirit that seemed to overflow through the screen. He couldn't help but shook his head and said, after so many years, Sengoku, you are still so difficult to deal with. Top War, it's coming soon. Riley slowly took a sip of the wine and murmured. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 740. At this time, the Grand Inspector of Jun was also looking at the naval officers who were simmering with anger. Feeling the hot heart of justice, even a veteran Navy like her could not help but feel a little restless. It seemed that his calm mind had been mobilized, and he recalled his enthusiasm when he first joined the Navy many years ago. Dalag, everyone's justice is different, but no matter how you feel about the limitations of the Navy's justice, do you have any regrets at this moment? Jun thought so in his heart. More than 20 years ago, Durag had a long conversation with him before leaving the Navy. Jun always remembered it in his heart. Yes, the Navy has limitations. But, who can dare you say that the Navy's justice is wrong? You have chosen your path. I, Jun, will also carry out my path. Warring States period, after so many years, he is still so powerful. With just a few words, he can make our Navy restless. Garp smiled and said. After a slight pause, he looked at Jun and said, how is it, aspiring to become a marshal, do you feel the gap between yourself and the Warring States period? Jun nodded without hesitation and said, of course I feel it. In my opinion, Marshal Boss is the biggest contributor to the Navy in the past 20 years. Without him, the Navy would not be as strong as it is today. The point. After a short pause, Jun continued, I still have a lot to learn. Yes, you are right, the Navy can leave me and you, but it seems that it can only leave him in the Warring States period, Garp also said with a little emotion. Then, Garp looked at the naval officers in the square and said softly, with this military spirit, justice will prevail, I have to risk my life this time to carry out my own justice. There is no doubt that Garp, who seems to be the most ruthless, has also inspired his righteous heart at this moment. In this battle, Garp will go all out and look forward to death. The gold pira in Jun's waist trembled slightly, as if she couldn't wait to get out of the sheath. She looked at Garp with a firm gaze, and then said, I am the same, I will go all out. In this way, the marshal's speech ended. Although the scene became quiet, you could still feel that the flames seemed to be burning and even getting more intense. After an unknown period of time, a heavy fog seemed to have arisen on the sea in the distance. This area, the heavy fog soon covered the sea. At the same time, Marshal Warring States' eyes flashed and he said, here we come. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone noticed something was wrong. In the heavy fog, there seemed to be a vague silhouette of a battleship flickering. There is no doubt that there is a large fleet coming in the fog. The report from the surveillance ship also came from the phone bug in Marshal Warring States' hand. The Marshal is the flagship of the coalition of the Whitebeard pirates and the Warhammer pirates, flying the flags of both families. Marshal Sengoku frowned. Sure enough, Orgrim is here. This war is not just a war with the Whitebeard pirates. From the beginning, have you faced the generals of both sides? Shogun's battle. After thinking for a moment, the Warring States Marshal said to the phone bug, open your mouth and don't engage in battle. Marshal, the people on the other side of the phone seemed a little surprised. Executing an order, the Warring States Marshal said in a deep voice. He hesitated a little, but quickly responded, yes, everything is for justice. As we all know, the Avalon Legion is almost invincible in naval battles. Because they have murlocs, even though the Navy's warships are the strongest standard warships in the world. But the Warring States Marshal still doesn't want to fight a bloody battle with the murlocs of the Avalon Legion here. To what a loss. Moreover, there are not too many warships deployed on the headquarters side. There are almost 100 or so warships. They are not particularly advantageous. Even based on the worst estimate, I am afraid that the number of warships in the Avalon Legion is even higher than what about the Navy warships. In fact, Sengoku's estimate was correct. The Warhammer pirates had nearly 200 battleships, and they also brought with them elites, top-notch experts in naval battles, and numerous fishmen warriors. If the Navy really sticks to naval battles, I'm afraid, the end will be sad. If only the Whitebeard pirates had arrived, Sengoku felt that he would have blocked the fleet forcefully. But now, he hopes to let it in and play Marineford's powerful artillery defense system. As for the warships lingering on the sea, two other options can be used to fill in the tactical plan. First, it can be used as a mobile source of troops to supplement. Once the combat in a certain area is at a disadvantage, warships can maneuver to increase troops. Secondly, if the war can be won, warships can be used as pursuit troops. No matter from which perspective, it is much more effective than fighting against the Avalon Legion in a naval battle. Soon, the incoming fleet sailed out of the fog and officially entered the Navy's sight. Sure enough, it was a large fleet from the Avalon Legion, and there were not even a few ships from the Whitebeard pirates in it. On the deck of the leader's flagship, there were several figures standing. Beckman looked at the naval warships that were gradually dispersing, frowned slightly and said, "They are really decisive, just break up." "Pursuit?" Neiman stood next to Beckman and asked. Beckman thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "No, originally we were just covering the Whitebeard pirates and letting them go straight into the center. Now, it seems unnecessary. Let's inform Whitebeard and tell them that there is no need to be sneaky. The Navy is ready and waiting for us." Marshal Waring State's order for the warships to open their mouth seemed a bit weak, but he seized the initiative in the hands of their Navy. It was impossible for Beckman and others to fight to the death with the warships under such circumstances. Fighting, after all, their purpose of war is to capture Marineford, the naval headquarters, the stronghold of justice. In this way, there seems to be only one way left in front of both sides, to attack the enemy. It is also the tactic with the highest casualty rate. "It's Ben Beckman, Orgrim isn't here," Jun frowned and said. Garp's expression also became serious, and he said in a deep voice, "Whitebeard is not here either." The Warring States Marshal was also a little strange at this time. Where are the people? Although the fleet is here, why are the two key captains not here? At this moment, the expressions of Fujitora Yuxiao and Chief Staff Officer Ahe, who were closer to the port, changed, and their eyes were all focused on the huge crescent bay of Marineford. This is, fortunately, that guy from the Warring States period didn't order a naval battle, otherwise he would have been thrust right into the center and beaten on both sides, Chief Staff Officer Ahi said softly. Somewhat unexpected, Fujitora smiled and said softly. As soon as the two of them finished speaking, the sea surface began to surge in the Crescent Bay port. Just when everyone's attention was attracted, a large ship broke through the sea surface, and the coating on the surface exploded with a bang. Later, several more warships appeared in the Crescent Bay port of the Navy headquarters. The leader's flagship suddenly landed on the sea, causing waves. This was the flagship of the Whitebeard pirates, Newgate's car. Moby Dick. After the Moby Dick rushed out of the sea, it did not launch an offensive with several surrounding warships. Instead, it parked in place. The various forts at the Navy headquarters quickly turned and aimed their firepower at the Moby Dick, as if they were just waiting for Marshal Sengoku's order to roar. However, Marshal Warring States did not speak. On the contrary, he was very quiet and stared at the Moby Dick. The entire Marineford also became quiet, as if waiting for something. After a while, a clanging sound came from the Moby Dick, as if something was hitting the ship step by step. Sure enough, I saw the strongest man in the past, the great Yonko-level pirate Whitebeard Edward Newgate, holding the Kongyun Kiri and walking step by step to the deck of the bow. Every time he took a step, the cloud cutter in his hand would tap on the deck. Those sonorous sounds seemed to hit the hearts of all the Navy bit by bit. Invisible pressure came over me. Even though he had been defeated by the King of Night, at this moment, everyone seemed to recall his former fame. Big pirate, Whitebeard appears. With a clang, Kongyunki's bottom rested on the deck, and Newgate's figure also stopped. His tall body looked around Marineford, looking at the vigorous fighting spirit of countless naval officers, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Then, he turned his attention to the towering execution platform, where his son, Teach, was being held. And Sengoku, the Navy Grand Admiral, stood beside Teach. "Koolalala la," Newgate laughed. Although he was far away, his laughter seemed to spread throughout Marineford. "Dad," the moment Teach saw Newgate, he couldn't help but call out. He didn't know why. In short, at the moment when he saw his father really appeared, his cold heart and ruthless will, they seemed to have melted a lot. Teach has his charm. There is no doubt that he is a truly evil pirate, an ambitious tycoon and careerist. But how can Newgate's charm be so different? Xiao. Just by his appearance here, Teach felt his heart ached. He recalled everything he had done on the ship over the past decades. This ruthless guy, in the original story, could be called a wolf-hearted guy. This time while on the execution platform, my mentality changed dramatically. Sure enough, human beings are complex creatures. Good and evil can never appear purely in people. I'm late, Tiki, wait a moment, we'll rescue you right now, Newgate said with a confident smile on his face. After hearing this, Teach suddenly burst into tears and shouted, Dad, you shouldn't have come, it's all my fault. It was my fault. Newgate was stunned for a moment, and then the smile on his face became more relieved. In fact, he had also doubted whether something was wrong with Tiki, because it always felt like a conspiracy. But he still came because he wanted to confirm, and because the Whitebeard pirates had to come. But now, he felt that there was no need to confirm anything. Teach's tearful call made Newgate feel that it didn't matter. Even if the son really had some problems before, but, never mind. Being able to forgive his children is what a father should do. There was no need to think too much. Teach's call was enough to make him pass the final test in Newgate's heart. Yes, Newgate has always been such a person. As long as he does not violate his iron rules and does not kill his companions on the ship, he can choose to forgive his sons if they do anything else wrong. Just like in the original story, he forgave Scyard who gave him the sword of dutiful son. Even if Teach had made any mistakes before, Newgate believed that he had been deceived and forgave him in his heart. In fact, it seems to be the case. Scyard was deceived by Sakaski. So judging from the current situation, it seems that Teach was deceived by Orgrim and became Lame. Both of them made the same mistake. Newgate had the heart to forgive Scyard, so why couldn't he forgive Teach? Not to mention, he was not sure whether there was anything wrong with Teach. At the same time, the matter is now over and there is no need to confirm it. Even though we are here, we still have to fight in a bloody battle.